There you have it. It's a good morning if you're just waking up to us. That's some of the events that have gone on during the week. It is Kane and Kingy for Fireball Friday. Ben Amafio is the CEO of that club. He's going to join us live in the studio. So let's start with you, Kingy. I guess the one question I've had for you all week is why did you think it was unfair for me to name Glenn Luff and be critical of him?
No, I didn't think it was. I just think when my starting point is if you're going to talk about someone publicly about their employment and take Glenn Luff, his name out of this, right? Anyone in football, then I think you've just got to get your facts absolutely 100% right.
What was wrong?
Well, hang on. I'll tell you, right? I think you've got to get your facts right. So we've talked about coaches who are in those positions, big money positions. You can say what you like about a guy that's getting rewarded and remunerated like that. And they accept that. They accept that's part of the role. If you're the list manager, if you are the one that takes control of the list, and this is where I get to, he hasn't been in that position for the period that you're talking about. He hasn't been. So you've got a lower threshold to absolutely checking the facts than what I have. I actually, that's why I take my computer everywhere.
So what period was he there for, and what period have I been critical of that he wasn't there for?
I'm not here to correct your discussion.
No, well, I've spoken about the last two seasons. The Will Phillips one was the one on Monday night, which led me to that criticism. The other ones were the ones that they've brought in since 2020. So which period have I didn't mention Jared Pollock. I've not one because I know Glenn Luff wasn't there for that period.
I'm not mentioning specifics either. I'm just telling you that all well and good. So the Adrian Dodoro comparison's not right because Adrian actually runs recruiting at Essendon.
But the criticism has been around the three players that were left out on the weekend, three players that have been brought in the last two seasons, and overlooking Logan McDonald over Will Phillips in the draft. So I think that's inaccurate to say that my criticism was of a period where Glenn Luff wasn't there or wasn't involved.
No, wasn't involved and wasn't there are different things. You can be involved.
Was he the list manager at that time?
Who have you had to go out underneath Adrian Dodoro?
Underneath Adrian Dodoro? In terms of what?
List builds.
Well, he's the list manager. I'm not familiar with your question.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The top of the tree makes the decision. Brady Rawlings is actually the list manager this year at the Kangaroos.
Yeah, but he wasn't. He wasn't for the period that I was critical of. So I'm not.
No. You let me just put out the facts. If you're going to talk about the decisions that they've made over 4 years and apportion that to Glenn, then I think that have to make
I said over the last 2 years. I didn't go back to 4 years.
But he hasn't been there the last 2 years. Yeah, he hasn't been the list boss this year. He hasn't been. So the 2 years is even.
But I haven't been critical of this year's draft picks or this year's trade. I'm critical of the ones from last year and the draft from last year. I'm not, or 2 years ago. I haven't been critical of the mid-season draft because it hasn't happened. I haven't been critical of the draft at the end of the year because it hasn't happened. So I think you're wrong to say that he wasn't there and wasn't the list manager of the decisions that I've been critical of. So what's the threshold of a person who can be named? Is it based on money?
No, it's not about being. If that's your role, name them. Fine. But I dispute that as a fact. And you say that I'm too close to him as a friend. I know most of the information because I'm interested in what his role is. So I know what his role is.
So okay. Well, so was it wrong
I know the facts.
That he wasn't involved or wasn't worthy of criticism over, for example, selecting Will Phillips? Is that unfair?
So this you've got to understand recruiting. Okay, so this is the industry. So the coach sets the direction for the rebuild. We're going to build from the midfield out. Okay, so when you go from the midfield out, that as a recruiter, the name Logan McDonald comes off the table with your first pick. So he's not even a viable option if you're building from the midfield out.
So you're saying David Noble is making the list management decisions at North?
You're not listening. You're skewing what I'm saying. If the coach comes in and says we're going to build from the midfield out, starting from this draft or last draft, whenever it is, then a 6'6" full forward is not part of your discussion for pick 3.
Yeah, I find that unbelievable. We can ask Ben Amafio.
Why do you find that unbelievable?
Because you could have. What if you had the number one pick in the draft and the best player available is a key forward, and you're telling me that because they're building from the midfield, you cannot pick a key forward even though he's the best player in the draft? I find that unbelievable.
But you've got to have a policy. You've got to have a roadmap to a rebuild. And if the roadmap is build from the midfield out...
So Nick Riewoldt could be there, because you're building from the midfield out, you're going to ignore Nick
they're
Riewoldt
different
because
strategies.
that's your philosophy.
But there are different philosophies, exactly. Like, not
Well,
all,
I just find that
not-
hard to believe. That's all. It might
No,
be
no.
true. I just find that
No,
staggering.
listen, well, look at history. Carlton built the spine, yeah? They went Wiedering, Curnow, Mackay. Built the spine in 2015. Melbourne, midfield out. Okay, I'm sure they overlooked some tools. I can give you the names if you want. Brisbane, midfield out. I'm sure they overlooked some tools.
Yeah,
I can go through the names, but you've got to have a starting point and you've got to have evidence, recent history showing that this works. It worked at Melbourne, it worked at Brisbane, and I've no doubt that that is the model that they're mimicking at the Kangaroos. Why would that be wrong?
Because I speak to these people every year on trade radio, and the recruiters would say, with our first pick, we're going to take the best available player. So I find
That's a philosophy.
I find it really hard to believe that you would overlook a key position player because a coach has said we're building from the midfield out.
You can find that hard to believe, right?
Well,
You finding it hard to believe is different to publicly saying, why would you pick Phillips over McDonald when it's a club decision to take the midfield out approach?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of shifting of responsibility. Now,
No, there's not. No, that's basic. That's black and white.
You've been critical of coaches before who have picked teams, and that's like saying
Because they're the decision maker.
But
They're
so
the
is the
ones
list manager.
making.
Like
Not if he's not the list manager.
Well, he has been
Not
for
even-
the 2 years of the period that I was critical of. I haven't been critical of anything forward. I can't predict the future. For the time that I was critical
I know
of,
you can't.
he was the
I'm
list
just-
manager. So stop shifting blame. Like,
I'm not shifting blame. I think your points on the actual talent are valid. Your actual discussion around all the guys you're talking about that have come in as trades and the decisions that you think are wrong at this stage are valid, and that's an opinion.
So then why is it unfair to Nat? Why are you?
Because he's
why
not
is
in
it
that position
unfair?
of responsibility. He's not in that position that you're saying he is, and publicly saying, putting his name to it. I think that's unfair. I think that if you're in that role and you've got it wrong, go your hardest. Go your hardest. No problem. We're all big boys. Okay. But if you're not, I think it's unfair.
Okay. Well, all I can do is go off a North Melbourne website release where Glenn Luff.
Website release.
Well,
Wow.
Glenn Luff is appointed as.
That's-
What would you like me to do?
That's a different threshold.
No,
to
it's
mine,
not.
That's all I'm saying.
You're the list manager, Kingy. That's the
And
role.
it never gets up to that.
we
One-
all know what a list manager does. You're in charge of building the list. Now, if you're announced on the club website and quoted to say how excited you are as being the list manager of this football club, and that is, what am I going to do? I'm not a mate of Glenn Luff. I can't ring him and say, hey, Glenn, I know your title says list manager, but are you actually not making these decisions?
So who did that?
Pardon?
What's
No,
that
I'm just
comment?
saying, you're saying my threshold is a club website or a club media release. That's all I can go off. I don't have the ability to ring someone that I'm going to be critical of. It's like saying I'm going to be critical of Ben
Everyone has the
Rutten.
ability to check the facts. Everyone.
The facts are there. So you
Brady
are you
Rawlings is the
telling
list
me
manager now,
he is
right
now.
now.
He is
Yeah.
now, but he wasn't for the
Last year.
period that I was critical
Last year.
of. November last year.
Yeah.
November last year. So not not of the time period.
So the
where,
one draft you're going after is the draft we're talking about with Phillips and
Well, that
McDonald,
was
okay?
that was the topical
That's the one draft.
And also
That is
selection.
the one.
And also
I'm giving you the facts. I'm trying to tell you the facts. That is the one draft.
So is it fair then that I was critical of that one draft?
But yeah, you didn't take the 6'6" guy. You took the midfielder because they're building from the
and
midfield
also
out. That's the discussion.
Stevenson, Coleman, Jones, and Bosnalagi, the ones that you've brought in as list manager, cannot get a game for the 17th ranked team. I don't find that unfair. Now, I mean, you've been quoted as saying about Ned Guy that this could be the greatest list build era you've ever seen. This was last year. You said, and
He was in charge.
Yeah, and so's Glenn Luff. You've just admitted that. You said Ned Guy could have the biggest influence on the
There's a
Collingwood
salary cap.
rebuild.
Theirs was a
and
salary
he's not
cap
even
bill.
there anymore.
No, but theirs was a salary cap era that went on for 3 years.
So-
They ruined their salary. They had to purge players because of the salary cap. It's chalk and cheese.
Your criticism is fair on Ned Guy. Do not get me
because
do not
it's a
get me
3-year
wrong. But
criticism is around the salary cap.
I find it confusing that I'm not allowed to name Glenn Luff or be critical of Glenn Luff in that role, but you can
you're
be
allowed to
critical
be.
of Ned Guy.
No,
Like,
you're
so-
allowed to be. You're allowed to be as long as they're in those roles.
Well, they were. We've just discovered that.
Yeah.
We have. Oh, we have discovered. Oh,
Well, I thought the comment about he recruits off a laptop was really cheap.
and that's fine. That's fine. I don't. I clearly, if you've like in the media release, it says that he spent 20 years at Champion Data. Clearly, they would think that is a strength of his. Like he's not coming in to run the IT department. He's coming in to give that analytical, statistical view of the players
Every
you
club
pick.
does that.
100%,
Every club.
100%, but not necessarily in the list manager's role. Like they all
100% in the list manager's role. 100%.
what they spend 20 years at a stats.
Oh, no, they would spend $100,000 a year on statistical information from Champion Data that gives them a leg up to steering from one player to the next in a national draft. 100%. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand the role.
Yeah, I'm struggling to find many list managers that have had that background, and that was
The background. No, it's not the background. It's the. You're saying that he doesn't go and watch the games.
No, I
You're
didn't say that. You've
you're
put words into my mouth there. I've never,
Okay.
not once did
You're
I get
making out-
personal.
you're
I never
insinuating-
questioned
you
his
did
work
get
ethic.
personal.
No,
I'm not saying he's
personal.
worth it. Hang on.
I didn't
Don't
say
jump.
he's. I didn't say he's
Don't
not.
panic.
I'm not
I'm
panicking,
saying
Kingy.
when you say he picks players off a computer screen, that is the assertion you give.
It's like saying if the list manager was from the AIS and I said "Hey, all he picks is athletes, is that personal?
Well, it's wrong. I don't know if it's personal, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
To pick from
Well, it
a
hasn't
computer
worked.
screen is a different.
Well, he
is a
hasn't. It hasn't worked. Do you concede that it's strange that comment that I made, and if you think it's personal, that's fine, was the catalyst for him leaving? Like, do you
Not
think
the
he's
catalyst. The catalyst is
so that report was wrong?
You change the version of the facts.
I can only go off what I've heard.
What he told you sat there, or you would have heard Eddie Maguire have a conversation with Glenn, and he said
Was
it
the
was
tipping point?
Tipping point, not the
Do you
reason,
find
not
that
the sole
strange?
reason.
Do you find
He
that
didn't-
strange?
Do I find it strange?
Do you think he's in the wrong industry if a comment like that, which
No.
I think is reasonably
Tipping
benign,
point, is it?
was
Yeah.
the tipping point? Do you think he's in the wrong industry if that's...
But you've got to understand the situation that some of these people are in. These guys were already at a level, right? Okay, so we'll talk with Benamafia when he comes in. Okay, so this is not about Glenn. This is share this a bit across the club at the moment. They felt like they were unsupported. They felt like they were on an island, if you like. Okay, so when this come, I think it was the tipping point. So I think it may have affected others and challenged them and say, why am I doing this? I'm not even the decision maker. Why would I continue to take responsibility for something that I'm not the decision maker on? Blah, blah, blah. And then in the end, you make a common sense decision for yourself and your family. That is what tipping point is. Okay, this has gone too far. Now it's time. It's a tough job recruiting. They're away most weekends. They're on a computer when they're not at a game. When they're at a game, they've got notes going everywhere. It's a disastrous job. I'd hate to do it, right? So I think it got to a tipping point. He'll be involved in footy. You watch. You've kept saying all week that you can't. This guy can't work in footy. It's not for him.
I don't think it's for
I've
him.
heard it, mate.
I don't think it's for him. I don't think if that is
How
the
the
tipping
hell would
point,
you know it's not for him?
because if that
How
is
the hell?
if that's the tipping point for you
But there are other things.
resigning from your job because I said they're picking players off a computer screen. If that's the tipping point, you're in the wrong industry.
If you're naming someone that it's not his responsibility, then that was
But
a
it-
tipping
but it-
point.
but it-
There's
But it was his responsibility. I just Ned Guy can be named, Adrian Dodoro can be named, Jason Cripps can be named, Justin Reid can be named, and I didn't hear anything from you. No, I didn't hear it. When I went and had a crack at Adrian Dodoro 4 weeks ago, my phone didn't ring. When Matt Rendell said that Ned Guy doesn't watch footy,
I don't endorse your opinions and
I didn't hear from you. Like you said,
Well,
it's
I don't
unfair
send you
to
a, hey,
name.
well done, mate. Great opinion.
No, I know,
today."
but
that's not my job.
But we spoke this week about so why is this one so? Why has this
Because
one got you so upset?
Because the facts are wrong.
Well, they weren't. We've just established that.
Well, you've got a lower threshold than me,
Okay,
and that's okay. I'm happy for you to have that opinion, and your opinion on the players is probably right.
and he was the list
it's
manager
ju-
when the players were taken. So that's
One
all.
draft,
That's all I can
Phillips
go off.
versus McDonald, and that's a decision that's made by the coach as to which way forward. Do you take the tall and build the spine, or do you build midfield out? That's a magnet that's taken off the recruiting board.
One
So
300.
when you're a club like this in crisis,
Yeah.
then these are all the things that get thrashed out. Okay, nothing.
So did he want to pick
builds-
Logan McDonald, and the club said you can't?
I can't answer that for him, and it would be ridiculous to sit here and do that. But the picking of players is just a
It's more
complete
than that,
mystery.
though. It's more than that. When my radar is flagged when 3 of the players that you've brought in as list manager can't get a game for the 17th ranked team. So it's more than just that one example. And I've been on this for I mean, spoke about this a year ago. The Logan McDonald pick. It's been on it for a long time. It hasn't just been this week.
But you talk about a lot of players, like how they're going and where they're at, and you are
And you
potentially
don't.
the worst list person that I've heard. You go after players after 20 games. I heard you. I can give you evidence. The Rosie Walsh example is one that you now say, I got that wrong. These list managers don't have the luxury in 2 years' time after a draft to say, oh, hang on, I got that one wrong. They don't have that luxury.
Kingy, at the start of the year, you had Jordan De Goey ranked as a top 5 player, and we argued about you pay him whatever you like. You and Daniel Hoyne on Champion Data 2 weeks ago. You said you wouldn't sign him, so I'm happy to go through the things
But
you
I'm
get
not
wrong
in-
as
I'm
well.
not doing- I'm not
and I'm
doing-
not doing it. I'm not a list manager either. So
But my point is, so Jacob Wiedering, you said can't win a one-on-one. He's not a man without a weapon.
And
you
you
said
said
trade.
trade-
You
and
said
you
put
said
Oliver
trade-
up for trade
and-
mid-2020.
Yeah,
wins the flag 15
and
games
I'm not,
later.
I'm not a list manager. And you said Jordan De Goey is a top 5 player in the game. And then 2 weeks ago, you said don't contract him. Hold off. So if you want to go through things you've got wrong, I'm very happy to.
Oh, let's do it on facts. Jordan De Goey's performances have him ranked top 5 player in the game at this point of the season.
So you can change
that's
in
what
2
we
weeks.
do.
Like we argued about Adam Simpson and whether he's the right man for the rebuild. 3 days later, you said I'm questioning whether Adam Simpson's the right coach for the rebuild. So if you want to do
the
that,
facts changed because players
in 3 days. In 3 days,
Yeah, because the players broke the protocols.
so the
facts changed.
So the facts changed about the role that Jacob Wiedering was playing.
You know, you're smarter than that. You're smarter than that. We had the conversation on the Friday. The discussion
and on Monday
about
it changed.
You just don't listen. You got 2 of them, mate. Use them. The thing with Adam Simpson is the players went out and broke protocols. It was a clear breach, and it could be construed as a direct whack at the coach, which is exactly what Caro said to you on Monday night. Or she said on Monday night, not to you. You went on the show on Wednesday night. I thought that was a shift. So when things shift, you have to assess it again.
Okay, well that's
You
fine.
know
That's
that.
fine.
You
If your
know
opinion
that.
can change like that, that's if you
Come
want to go
on,
back
man.
and
That's
and
ridiculous.
highlight things that have been said, you do.
If you traded Clayton Oliver at the end of 2020, it would have been a mistake.
And if you dropped Jack Higgins after round 1, it would have been a mistake. So we can go
Not for
through all
standards.
things that
You don't
people
lose the
get wrong.
player.
And the thing
don't
I
lose
do
the player if you
that
drop
Glenn Luff doesn't do is put his hand up when he gets it wrong. I don't. That's what I do, and I'm more than happy to say me saying Dion Prestia to Richmond was going to be a mistake. I'm happy to say I got that wrong. Me saying Rosie over
But you
Walsh,
get the-
I'm
that's-
happy to get that wrong.
List managers don't have that.
But I'm not a list manager. And
this is my point, right? They don't have the luxury of saying, "Oh, sorry, got that one wrong." You'll never hear a list manager say that.
So was the Collingwood one that you said has the history to be the worst list management mistake ever? Was that wrong?
That's the salary cap. That's a calculated, cool, clear-lighted day